We're so determined sometimes, I think, to be the ones who have the answer, that we're not open to just understanding that like the solutions might be simple and they might already be out there.
Hi, I'm Len Necefer. I'm half Navajo, I'm half Scottish-Romanian, with a PhD in engineering. And it's as confusing as it sounds. I used to work in government and academia, thinking I was saving the world. Turns out I was just wasting red tape, so I quit. Now, I'm pedaling up the Colorado River, the West's dwindling lifeline. Why? Because in 2026, after a century of mismanagement, stakeholders will renegotiate its future. This could be the river's last chance. So saddle up and join me. We're going to get uncomfortably close to the muddy reality. We've reached Colorado, the headwaters and namesake of this mighty river. As we ascend towards its origin, the landscape undergoes a dramatic transformation. Our journey brings us to the western slope, where we meet Tony, a cattle rancher who embodies a fascinating blend of tradition and innovation.
The good water.
Yeah, this is good water. So this water comes from Cathedral Peak, which is the little peak right behind the tree from here. But yeah, and so it's one of those mountain springs that was tapped back in the 60s, I believe. And you know, the water lines come down and serve about 90 ranches and homes down here.
How long have you been ranching?
So we came here 27 years ago now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Did you ever imagine you would be a rancher?
Yeah, I always had the dream of doing that, but I had no idea how. And then this place came together kind of miraculously, and it's been a dream come true.
Yeah. And now you're selling grass-fed beef, and what does that business look like for you? And
it's a really cool business. It's a really neat model of how to raise food. I often think this grass-fed beef, the way we raise it here, is like one of the best human food sources, because these animals, this is what they eat. It's just perennial grasses growing here, and they'll be about 2 years old when we butcher them. That's what they do every day of their life, is eat the grass. And we do irrigate the grass from the snow melt off these mountains right here. So it's a real tight circle here, you know, sort of the nutrient cycle and the water cycle and the life cycle and everything.
I was looking at some of the climbing equipment on the wall, so I want to ask you some questions about that.
Yeah, this was all stuff that was used at one time.
All these skis too?
Yeah, yeah.
Even the wooden ones, huh?
Oh yeah, you know, up until my 20s, we often skied on wooden skis.
Did those early experiences kind of, I don't know, inform or change the way that you think now about water? And
oh yeah, you know, I feel blessed, but I know mountains all over the state of Colorado really intimately, and I know what that feels like, what it smells like, what it tastes like. And now, you know, I'm a president of a ditch company, and I ranch on 5 different ditches and do a lot around water management and the irrigation water. And I have a deep sense of water in a lot of different contexts, and it makes me feel confident. As land stewards, we have to think about ourselves, and then we have to, you know, scope out to the bigger picture of it all. And we can never get just so focused on what we need that we lose sight of that bigger picture, because we have this obligation, and the other part of society needs to realize and compensate that obligation or that role that land stewards play in providing that space for, water that's so much more than just for agriculture. It gets used for every facet of human life.
Have you thought about like the changes in water use here and how it impacts communities downstream on the river?
Yeah, I think about that a lot, and with our ditches up there, as we, make choices to manage them. And my ranch is very much a part of dewatering the creeks down below Crawford here. My ditches come out of tributaries of Smith Fork Creek, and right below town, the creek is pretty much gone, just like the Colorado River down to Mexico. Up here, we're going to have to really justify what we do with that water, and we have these water rights, and to us, they're absolute, and we own this water. But what are we doing with the water? We're just raising hay that goes to feed horses that are, just pure hobbies for people. How important is that relative to, dewatering a town down in Arizona or, some other ecosystem down there? But I wonder sometimes if I'm raising grass-fed beef on this place and it's, a super high quality protein for people that eat it and, is very good for your health, then that seems like a pretty valuable use. But I think we're going to have to really think about what use are we putting our water rights to, and what's the value to the bigger picture. Ultimately, with the water, we should be growing food with it one way or another to a great extent.
Tony's ranch represents the other side of the agricultural coin. When I consider the massive challenges facing the Colorado River, my brain says only large-scale legislations can solve this. Yet, I've witnessed small-scale acts that kindle hope. It's tempting to give in to despair in the face of such daunting issues. But taking ownership, doing something, anything, seems to give individuals a sense of purpose and hope. And we should never underestimate the power of that. As we ponder these contrasts and contradictions, it's time for a change of pace. I'm headed to Winter Park to catch the last remaining snow for a slushy ski with my Lakota brother and Colorado local Connor Ryan. Today I'm seeing the results of a project that began on this mountain when Connor and I first met. Together with other native artists and skiers in Winter Park Ski Resort, we renamed several ski runs honoring the local Arapaho people in their own language. It's an emotional moment seeing native people recognized in a sport that has helped us both connect to our roots.
We first skied here February, January of 2017.
Yeah.
On this side of the mountain, and I remember, yeah, you had the duct tape kit, and the old Prius, and man, it was cool because I remember seeing you rip off some of these jumps, and I was like, holy shit, this guy's talented.
And now to be here and see this and just watch how that relationship between you and I and this mountain has grown over time. And in fact, this is more symbolic, I think, of something larger that's happening at the mountain, and whether that's including Indigenous people or it's re-emphasizing the environmental values that all skiers should share with Indigenous cultures. It's just emblematic of something bigger, something more revolutionary.
When you're here, you're at the top of the watershed. You're at the top of this Colorado River, and it's one of the few ways that we as humans can interact with this part of the water cycle, What was your entry point into caring about water?
So I kind of saw skiing and my culture being in two separate worlds. But there was a day that my uncle sent me to fill up a bucket of water for the sweat lodge. And I dipped that bucket into the stream. And as I looked up the stream, I realized it led right to the ski area. And I kind of just had this realization of like, wait, everything I'm learning about the water in the sweat lodge, I'm learning about literally this was the snow that I just skied on. It's the same thing where I'm taking this time just to be grateful for how water gives me life. I think it starts with something as simple as this. It's just knowing like, oh, this place that I'm skiing in at the top of the watershed, it has a name that's a lot older than Winter Park.
Yeah.
And you can love this place for being Winter Park at the same time that you can love this place for being Eagle Wind.
Yeah. In the Navajo worldview, we talk about the water having eyes and ears and can hear and can talk, has feelings. Because they're just saying water is a really complex thing, as complex as a human, and it should be treated as such. Because if we treat something as if it's a living being, we're going to confer a lot more respect onto it. And I've always been sort of conflicted, like, how do we get to that point in like, you know, shifting culture around this river? You know, I'm getting on my soapbox. It's like, this river is treated as a commodity. And, you know, that's presenting issues now. And we're at that point now where it's like, we need a different frame of reference. And for a lot of the native folks along the river, it's like, well, you know, sit in the back is like, we got, you guys haven't talked to us in a while, but when I look at it, you know, it's like, I really think about that. You use this word, it's like, it's our relative.
You can get into all these nuances about scientifically what's happening to the water, or you could just be like, yeah, respect that as a being with its own perception. You know, you're not gonna go into the woods and just poke a bear.
Yeah.
But we certainly do it to rivers.
I don't know if I told you this story, but I had this moment with my grandfather, who was a medicine man, and we were out collecting herbs, probably when I was like 10, 11. We were on top of a ridge like this, out on the res, and he just stopped me, and he's like, you know, just said Navajo, he's like, you know, I know you're gonna go really far in this Western education thing. He's like, don't forget this is your first classroom, and he was like kind of pointing to the outdoors. And I remember going through the schooling and, you know, and just being deep in the books and deep in writing. And I kept coming back. I was like, man, I'm learning all these things. I'm getting quote unquote smart, but I don't feel smart. Like, I don't feel like I understand. I understand this Western way of knowing, but this other way of knowing in that first classroom, I just feel like still like a kid.
We put a lot more emphasis on learning from the university as opposed to learning from the universe.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why stuff's all out of balance. And you're like, you're learning about the outdoors from people who haven't been outside. And let's discredit all the information from the people who were here outside so long they turned brown. There's a little bit of an irony to just like, we're so determined sometimes, I think, to be the ones who have the answer ourselves, that we're not open to just understanding that like the solutions might be simple and they might already be out there. Oh, right, the landscape, the ecosystems, all that functioned before we intervened. So how do we get, you know, back to that neutral state? And I think like sometimes we're trying to reinvent the wheel instead of looking at the medicine wheel. You know, it's just like, keep it simple.
Standing atop the watershed, despite having done it countless times before, felt profoundly different this time. The entire Colorado River system stretched out before me in my mind's eye. Its challenges and complexities suddenly contained in a context both vast and minute. But before I can process it all, I need a moment to decompress, and for that, I'll need a beer. So, I'm leaving the Colorado River basin behind and following the water as it flows to the Front Range.
Here we are at Horsetooth Reservoir. This is one of 3 reservoirs in the Colorado Big Thompson project, which brings water to this side of the divide. And Horsetooth is one of 2 water sources for Fort Collins, drinking water and the water we brew our beer with. The other is the Poudre River, which we're about to ride by.
Sweet.
Not far from where we're skiing, Grand Lake feeds the pipe supplying this reservoir. It marks the start of an intricate web of engineering marvels designed to feed the growing cities of the Colorado Front Range. Taylor Boyd, a good friend and a big insider in the world of snowboarding, cycling, and beer, decided to join me for the last few miles to the brewery. These days, he works for New Belgium Brewing as a brand guru for their carbon-neutral Fat Tire Ale.
If you had to pick one single learning from the trip, is there one?
I think everyone on the river kind of knows their zone, knows their water use, and it's like kind of, there's been a couple folks that have been able to connect the bigger picture of where they sit in the watershed, and I think in order to like look at this river, like we have to really look at it from a really big scope, and it takes a lot of time in these places to learn where the water's going, how are people using it. And I think get out of our bubbles a little bit, it feels like, because we all think that our water use is the most important. And, you know, it's like, I think really, like, I think about the analogy about sharing a beer as a way to, you know, lessen the tension on the conversation about the river is, I think, going to be really important. That sort of space for more collaboration is needed, because we talked to some folks that were pretty defensive about their water use. And I knew that kind of that we might hear some of that, but I think what actually gave me a lot of hope was hearing the folks that were coming at it from a place of more collaboration.
You're gonna dip your tire, huh?
I gotta dip my tire. Yeah, I dipped the rear end in Mexico, and I figured, why don't we just dip the other end at the other end of the river?
Yeah.
So
there's a little beach down there that I think we can take a dip in.
dip.
Tire can.
Let's do it.
Okay.
A ride up this watershed wouldn't be complete if I didn't dunk the other end of my bike in the headwaters of this river.
Closure, dude.
Closure. You made it.
I made it.
Yeah, rinse that mud off.
Yeah, look at that.
Nice work, dude.
Yeah. What a trip.
New Belgium Brewing is taking a proactive stance on climate change, and for good reason. Brewing beer is both water and energy intensive. When your water source is the endangered Colorado River, environmental stewardship isn't just admirable, it's essential.
Oh, cool.
Welcome.
This is
Have you
where
been
my
around-
Valentine's
have you been
gifts
around
come
the
from.
Before? Yeah. Oh yeah, totally. You get those little boxes
Yeah.
of treasures.
I am always interested when brands and companies take action around climate, but I think one of the things that maybe a lot of the public misses is what's the motivation? Because when we look at it, you know, in some instances, it's like, should some of these regulations or supports be coming from the federal government, and why does it make sense from a business perspective?
Because it impacts our business, right? Like we're seeing the impacts of climate change as we talked about all of the time already. I wish that I didn't have as many data points to list off when I go speak to a politician about this as I do around, you know, a drought in Montana or sprouting on the field in Montana or smoke or the latest wildfire or a supply chain issue impacting our CO2 supply. But, you know, because of that, we've always been trying to mitigate our impact, because not only is climate change impacting beer, but beer is also contributing to climate change, because this process, like anything else, we're consuming resources and therefore creating emissions. So we hold ourselves responsible for that. Oh, there's ducks. As time goes on and as these risks become more and more apparent, it's becoming much more just commonplace practice for any business to be doing their part. Our former CEO would always say, if you don't have a climate plan, you don't have a business plan. And that's just really, really true today.
From the frothy head of a cold beer to the headwaters of the Colorado River, We've traced a lifeline that quenches the thirst of the American West. Our journey began where the once mighty Colorado now trickles into the sea, or rather, where it doesn't.
We used to have millions of fish in this lake, and they're all gone.
We've witnessed the stark reality of a river in crisis. In the Imperial Valley, we saw how agriculture gulps down the lion's share of this water, turning desert into a salad bowl.
And it's an oasis in the desert.
Las Vegas has surprised us, not with excess, but with conservation efforts and technologies that have inspired conspiracies and hope.
Oh wow, I was not expecting this.
The Hoover Dam stood as a monument to human ambition and folly, holding back not just water, but time itself. We pondered the future of Lake Powell, a reservoir struggling to serve its purpose in the face of relentless drought.
We cannot keep augmenting water forever.
In the canyons of the Southwest, ancient petroglyphs whispered warnings from civilizations past, reminding us this isn't the first time humans have grappled with water scarcity in this unforgiving landscape.
What led these people to leaving this area was an extended mega drought.
We've heard from native voices, long ignored in water rights discussions, offering perspectives that view the river not as a resource to be exploited, but instead as a living entity deserving of respect. Woo! Finally, we ascended to the snow-capped peaks where the Colorado begins its long journey. Here, the crisis felt distant, but the responsibility weighed heavily.
Water is life. Yeah, respect that as a being with its own perception.
From farmers to city planners, from tribal leaders to conservationists, we've seen a West grappling with its water future. The Colorado River, once thought of as inexhaustible, now demands our attention and care. As we raise our glasses, filled with beer, brewed from this very water, we're reminded the future of the West flows with the Colorado. Cheers to all those working to ensure it keeps flowing.